Today, we're going to be speaking with Jason Della Rocca, who is a game industry entrepreneur, funding advisor, and cluster expert. He specializes in business, partnership development, pitching funding, and ecosystem cluster development. As the co founder of Execution Labs, he was a hands on early stage investor to over 20 independent game studios from North America and Europe. Between 2000 to 2009, he served as the executive director of the International Game Developers Association, IGDA, and was honored for his industry building efforts with the inaugural Ambassador Award at the Game Developers Conference. In 2009, Jason was named to Game Developer Magazine's Power 50, a list which profiles 50 of the most important contributors to the state of the game industry. As a sought after expert on the game industry, Jason has lectured at conferences and universities worldwide. I can't wait to begin to speak with Jason about all these amazing experiences he has had and that he has to share. Let's do it. Thank you so much, Jason, for being here today. Welcome, everybody, to this new amazing episode. How is everything going there in Montreal, Jason? After that, maybe you can expand a little bit on who you are or your background.
Yeah, sure. Well, Dana, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure. I'm here in Montreal, born and raised, and been here my whole life. Montreal is great. I mean, it's actually nice sunny weather today. It's summertime, so no snow. Montreal is an awesome city, and importantly, is a great gaming city. There's so many amazing game studios and game developers here in Montreal, and so. In part, that's why I've always stayed here in Montreal and lived and worked here in the game industry.
Yes, that's amazing. I actually, locally where I live, which is Winnipeg, I met a great creator, developer, designer, etc., the founder of a company. He started the company now, it's launching Oculus, but he decided to move to Montreal. He said, there is a reason why I moved to Montreal. And now you're telling me. That's interesting. I am actually planning a trip to Montreal. Whenever I go there, maybe I invite you for a coffee and maybe we do a little recording or something to share with you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, Montreal it's a lovely city, lots of nice cafes and amazing restaurant. I mean, we have the whole French influence that gives it a bit of a European vibe. But interestingly, it is the main game development center and hub in Canada.
Oh my
God. So number one is Montreal, number two is Vancouver, number three is Toronto. In Montreal alone, there's about 300 game studios and over 14,000 game professionals working in the city of Montreal. And in fact, it is one of the largest hubs, most successful hubs for game development in the world is right here in Montreal.
That's super exciting to hear. And so, yeah, like that's some data that maybe for some people in Canada might be unknown. Sometimes students or people ask me, where do you think that I could have, be in a place where it either actually has many studios, etc. That's a good background to have. Thank you so much. I understand, of course, you're a figure in the industry. Even your profile is in Wikipedia. It's very exciting. And you have had so much experience. You even were part of the IGDA, as per my understanding. And then after that, you founded Perimeter Partners. So you were apparently giving some strategic guidance to companies there. I wonder what main challenges maybe you had there and that maybe, gave you great insights for later on continue guiding their companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that the IGDA or International Game Developers Association is a global organization, a nonprofit that many game developers are members of all over the world. So if you're even as a student or an aspiring game developer, but mostly professional game developers, it's their professional organization, so they join, and the IGDA represents game developers. It works on industry issues. It helps with education and conferences, all kinds of stuff. They have local chapters around the world. It's really there to support the careers of game developers around the world. And so I was very fortunate that for almost 9 years I was the executive director, so the director of the organization, and that allowed me to work with game developers all over the world, with stakeholders, from governments to schools to publishers and investors to the studios themselves, really all corners of the globe. And so it was a great opportunity to meet and connect and to understand their challenges. Why were some succeeding? Why were some not succeeding? All kinds of fun and interesting things. It was a very challenging role. It was a very rewarding role. You can imagine trying to help developers careers and businesses all across the globe. It's a really all-encompassing. I didn't sleep much, let's say, for those
Wow.
9 years. Lots of travel, lots of big industry issues, etc. So when I started Perimeter Partners, which was just my small consulting agency, what I was initially doing was working with governments on how they could better support their regional game industry. And so what was happening was, as the game industry grew as a business, as more jobs were created, and these are sort of new economy jobs that are very appealing, well-paying, as game businesses were growing and generating revenue, and in many cases, it's export revenue, so you're bringing new money into the country or to a country. Governments realized, oh wow, game business is a good business to have, in our country. And so then someone in the government who knows nothing about games would be assigned, go figure out how to make more games, how to make more game jobs and more game businesses. And then they would find me as an expert about, ecosystems and game economy. And I would help them sort of have the strategy on how to better support, invest, and grow in their local game industry. And so, I was traveling the globe, doing work in New Zealand. I was just in Australia last week, and Brazil, and going to Istanbul, and did stuff in Saudi Arabia, all over the place, because people at the governmental side see the value of the game industry, and how good game jobs are, and they want to have more of them. So that was sort of the initial thinking behind Perimeter Partners.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Of course, a lot of insights gathered there. You also, it is my understanding, you also co-founded Execution Labs, which is a hybrid incubator accelerator.
Mm.
What trends have you observed in the environment of gaming, the gaming space, by through the Execution Labs, which is a little bit of a different ecosystem?
Yeah. So as you said, Execution Labs was kind of a hybrid incubator accelerator, and we actually started that in 2012, so over 10 years ago. At the time, it was the first venture-backed or venture-funded program of that sort in the world, and we built that here in Montreal, and we were investing in studios in Canada, the US, and Europe. And that was a wild adventure. It was my own first foray into investment, on the investment or funding side of things, and generated unbelievable insight into what it meant to be a startup, to be a founder, an entrepreneur, and also how to support the entrepreneurial journey and how to nurture those teams in order to be successful and to grow and etc. We were venture back, which meant we were trying to, build businesses that would become very valuable, and doing that was not always the easiest thing. I think to answer your question, one of the things that really has changed over time is the entrepreneurial identity of game developers. That 10 plus years ago, this whole idea of entrepreneurship and startup, like, it didn't exist. Game developers were and still are creators, makers. They're driven by passion, They are artists and designers and programmers and musicians and writers. They're not even thinking about business. They're not thinking about funding. They're not thinking about the market. They just have stuff that they have to, get out of their brains and hearts and onto the screen. It is very much a creation and passion driven endeavor. And in some cases, and certainly 10, 15 years ago, it's like some of them almost willingly ignored the business because they didn't want money to taint the beauty of their art. Right? It's like, oh no, if I think about economics and money, then my art won't be pure, and my voice will be tainted. Like, this kind of very pure artistic, art with a
Yeah.
capital A kind of approach. Um, and so this whole movement towards indie studios or startup studios was a very weird thing, because many of them then struggled with their identity, because my incubator now just gave you $100,000 check to fund your studio.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, hold on a second. I thought I was supposed to be a starving artist and I had to suffer to make great art, but now you've just given me a check for 100,000 and I'm not starving anymore. And so it was actually a really big surprise that we had, where many of those initial founders really struggled with their identity of being a kind of this sort of romantic, indie starving artist type mindset, versus now you're the owner of a business that has just received funding, and you have to think about, liability and sales and growth and all this kind of stuff. I think probably since then, that's maybe one of the biggest shifts that has occurred, where now you do have more founders, while they are makers driven by passion, they've also done a better job to embrace an entrepreneurial mindset and kind of merge those two identities. Like, so before it was, you were a starving artist suffering for your craft, or you were a banker business person, sell out, cold-blooded, all you cared about was money. Whereas now there's kind of like this in between, which is, you're an artist, but you're thinking about economics, and it's like okay to have that in the same brain. So this at a very, very meta level is kind of one of the shifts that I've seen over the past decade.
Absolutely. I've seen it myself as well, working with the students, for example, from boot camps, game development, where more and more often I can start to see how they ask the questions pertaining the business side. What if I want to become an indie developer and not only get the regular career advice of how to get a job, but what if I want to create my own studio? They have these type of questions now more often. I also participated in creating a program for entrepreneurship for game development. And that was a very exciting process, and also understanding through the one-to-ones what they are really, thinking. So when you say you said a keyword, it's important to mention it here. It's about the mental state that you have, the approach that you have. So some of us, for some reason, for the conditions where we have been growing up, we just attach ourselves with a fixed identity of that I am only the one that can do the coding. And sometimes they have to break that pattern to realize getting additional tools also might be beneficial if they want to create something like this. Actually, I say it's necessary to start understanding marketing, sales, publishing. All of these things is super fundamental. And even I say to them, even if you don't go to create a studio right away, it's gonna enhance your career as a professional from where you are right now.
No, it's
Entrepreneurial.
great advice. That's great advice. It actually makes you more valuable as an employee.
Yes.
But to extend on that, Diana, I often speak to students, and I'll go to career days, this kind of thing, and you do get some that say, well, I my dream is to be an entrepreneur and have my own studio, but I think I need to go work at a big company first. And my advice is always skip the big company. If you really want to be an entrepreneur, the best way to learn how to be an entrepreneur is to be an entrepreneur. And you start now, and you're going to learn and fumble, but you're going to grow, and that's how you learn. Because if you go work at Ubisoft or EA or wherever, what you will learn is how to be a good employee of that company. Nothing wrong with that. you'll get well paid, you'll learn your craft, you'll make cool games, but it will not get you closer to starting your own studio and being your own boss and being an entrepreneur. So both paths are fine,
Yeah.
but if really what you want to do
Uh-huh.
is have your own studio, then you start right away. You can skip getting a job.
Absolutely. I love that. I totally agree because it is like the same thing that happens for a developer when they want to create a project. The best way to start learning about that is actually creating the project, right?
Yeah,
It's actually
exactly.
putting yourself hands on. Otherwise, people somehow think that going to the company, they are going to understand company things, entrepreneurial things. But it's not the
Yeah,
case because the 8 hours per day that they are going to be there is going to be enclosed doing a limited task
yeah, yeah,
rather
yeah.
than when you start figuring out by yourself everything and through the mistakes. That's how things actually evolve from there.
Well,
Yeah.
and Diana, to your point, the bigger the company, the more narrow and
Yes.
specialized the task. It's like if you work at Ubisoft and you're on the Assassin's Creed team, it's like you're making eyeballs for 3 years for the character. That's your job, is you're the
Yes.
eyeball guy. And now you're the best eyeball maker in the company, but nothing else about anything else works.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a very
absolutely.
good point.
Yes, thank you so much. So, yeah, developers at this point wonder about things like if I want to send my project to a publisher, it is like a mystery thing. They really don't know how to navigate things, they don't know anything. Do you have any particular advice or common mistakes that you've seen that people overlook, like developers often overlook?
Yeah. I mean, it's a sort of an area that they often don't understand because they've been so kind of closed just in the creation process and not the business process. The first thing to remember is that anytime you go seek funding, whether it's from an investor, from a governmental funding program, a publisher, it's always the business case that you're pitching. It's not the game alone that you're pitching. And this is a very important lesson for younger game makers, where they think, well, here's the game I'm working on. I just have to show someone how cool it is, and then they'll give me some money. And it doesn't really work like that. You have to
Mhm.
understand the business case of your cool game, which does force you to do some market research and who's your audience, and look on Steam, and do other games in the same category sell well or not. And there's all kinds of work to be done there to understand the business case. Once they've done that research and understand that, oh, I have a good business case, then all of a sudden there's more confidence in going to pitch, to investors, publishers, granting agencies, etc. The other thing to think about is that almost no one will give you money unless you have some amount of traction or some amount of evidence that your game can succeed. And so the worst thing you can do is, hide in your mom's garage with all the doors and windows closed in the darkness, coding your game for 2, 3 years, and don't show anyone, don't tell anyone. It's a big secret, and then kind of reveal it and try to get funding, or launch it or whatever. You really have to be much more open. You have to post it online. You have to make a demo and get players. You have to run play tests. You have to post screenshots and gameplay videos on Twitter and Instagram and Reddit. Like, you have to start sharing it even at the very earliest stages, to start building an audience, to start growing a community, to start getting likes. You want to post a trailer and get tens of thousands of likes and reshares. You want to make a post of a cool screenshot of character art or whatever on Twitter, and it gets liked 5,000 times. And you want to get that kind of engagement, because that is evidence that success is possible. It's not guaranteed, but that success is looking more and more possible, or more and more likely. And then, in part, that's what makes your business case stronger. And then the investors, publishers, granting agencies, etc., are much more likely to then put the money in or to partner with you. Whereas if you're hiding in a cave the whole time, they'll be like, well, your game looks kind of like 10 other games we saw. How do we know yours is going to be the one that's going to succeed? So what you want to do is start building that evidence, that traction, that social proof, to help demonstrate that. So you have to be much more open with your process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Sometimes they have this common question which pertains to the evaluation of the economics, the business case, which is about monetization.
Mm.
How do I figure out what form of monetization I should have? What are your thoughts on that type of
Yeah,
conversation?
I mean, this we need another hour just to talk about monetization, but I mean, it's usually platform specific. So
Yeah.
if I'm making a mobile game, then it has to be free to play, which then means the monetization is coming from a combination of in-app purchases and advertising. So that's one very specific path. If I'm on PC and console, I'm probably making a premium game, which then it's $20 or $25 paid up front. So it's a pay to play kind of monetization. Then you have questions of do I have additional content or updates after the fact. Um, yeah, so it's often platform specific, but it's also game style. So if I was making a multiplayer only online game and it was on PC, then that would also I'd want it to be free to play, because if it's multiplayer only, then you want to have an open funnel to attract maximum number of users, and then you would monetize with cosmetics and or maybe a battle pass, this kind of stuff. But so it's a bit more complicated than something I can answer in two,
Yeah.
3 minutes, but it's
Mhm.
usually about the platform you're on, and then whether you're sort of single player versus multiplayer only.
Yes, yes, for sure. That's great. And somebody might be wondering in the back of their mind, because you're into the gaming industry, what are your favorite type of games? Just like out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to play a lot of games. Sometimes very early ones in development or to evaluate
Oh,
lots of
yeah.
games. Most of my game playing I do on the sofa, right? I'm here on my computer, all day, every day. So I actually don't play too much on my computer. So normally if I'm playing a game, it's because I just want to chill out and relax. And so I'll go sit on the sofa, the big screen, with the Xbox or a PlayStation. Um, yeah, I think the last game that I played where I really did the whole thing was Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I'm a big fan of the Borderlands series, and so that was a nice game. I do a lot of racing games as well. Um, Played a smaller one called Dredge, which is more of an indie game from a team in New Zealand. I do a lot of mobile games as well, but that's usually more for work, testing and checking
Yeah.
out developers' builds and stuff like that. But,
Yeah, that's like a dream job for many.
wow.
Like sometimes testing things, and it sounds like fun for many people.
Yeah. Well,
Eh,
when you have to do it for work and to pay attention and think, it's
So then
not
it's
just
not the same
not the
necessarily.
same.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's better than digging trenches or whatever. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Thank you. And approaching the end, maybe one of the last things we'd like to know from you is the future, the
Mm.
approach, like where do you see the gaming industry going? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a magic or crystal
Yes.
ball, so it's always hard to predict. I think based on the trends that we're seeing now, it's going to be continued movement towards user-generated content,
Mm,
and content
yeah,
creators,
yes.
where more and more games are going to be like Roblox and Fortnite, where they're platforms to
Mm,
play, but also to build. And
yes.
some of the players will be builders that will create experiences within those environments. And so we're seeing that more and more. And then that sort of also then links with the whole Twitch effect, right? This whole idea of watching as part of the
Mm,
fun. And so more games are being built to be streamable, to be watchable, to be engaging. And what we're starting to also see is that the games have integration with Twitch that allows the audience to affect the gameplay. So
wow.
imagine as you're playing and I'm watching you play and you get injured, I can, pay to have a health kit, fall from the sky to heal you so you can keep playing. Uh,
Oh my goodness.
yeah. So you're not just watching, but like the fans can
I
actually
tell
affect.
you,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. So we're
That,
starting to see this kind of spectator interaction,
active
which I think is going to be it's I don't know. I think this is some of the directions we're going in is games as platforms, user generated content, the whole Twitch, viewing, but also the spectators having, some interaction with the gameplay itself. These are some of the things that I think see. And then obviously AI is going to be, but AI is more about streamlining development. Although I think we are going to see completely new kinds of gameplay that are driven by real-time generative AI that we haven't barely seen yet. So I think that's coming as well.
Yeah, I think at some point we as, let's say, users or players are going to be able to create our own, customize our own experiences, how we actually have it, not like before, following a straight line as the developer designed it, but we decide many things thanks to generative AI. Yes. Wow, amazing insights. And I'm super excited you actually close it with the golden insight here. That's super interesting. Thank you so much, Jason. Is there anything that you wish I had asked you today?
Oh, no, I mean, for those students that are watching and they do have more business entrepreneurial aspirations and they're not getting that knowledge in school, I mean, my goodness, a quick Google on game business, game funding, game pitching, like there is a gold mine. I mean, even just putting my name into YouTube or Google, you'll see a whole bunch of lectures and presentations from other conferences that I've done on pitching and funding and business strategy and how to build a studio. So even if you're not getting that direct knowledge within your academic path, there's no excuse if that's your ambition and what you're aspiring to, just Google it, find the resources, and there's a ton of knowledge, and people are very sharing and open. So don't let that hold you back. Just dig in. And as we said before, if you want to be an entrepreneur, the best way is to just be an entrepreneur, and not wait for someone to give you permission.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This conversation has been super, super exciting. It is the best advice there. You can try to reach to Jason or find more information about him online. Thank you so much. Do you have any place where you like a website or something where you can invite people to check your stuff?
I have a crappy website, but just I'm easy to find on Google. Sorry, on LinkedIn or Twitter. I have a fairly unique name, so I'm easy to find.
Okay, thank you so much. And if you like this episode, please consider subscribing or sharing it to someone who really can get a lot of value out of this. Thank you so much and see you in the next episode. Bye for now.